area is bare.
Yes, I was momentarily. I lost the will of brain power because she touched my leg.
The rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain. Do you get them?
I don't.
I don't understand an open sandwich.
Neither do I. The topping falls everywhere.
But what's the point of an open sandwich?
I've got no clue.
Sandwich?
You know, so you're like squirt, 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 rub, rub, rub. Oh, that sounds odd.
Tip of the tongue, teeth and the lips.
I think that gets all there. Yeah. And that's your fish impression.
And I'll grab a blocker, actually.
Oh, she came prepared today.
I knew he was going to say that. Oh, look at the shine on that.
What happened to the shawl stroke blanket? Oh, you did well there. Tuck yourself into a hole, but managed to get yourself out of it.
That was dreadful.
It's a true professional.
Let's fold that nicely again, like it's in a shop.
Yeah.
So.
Let's just kidding. Let's just kidding. Welcome, everyone, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring my favourite colourways.
Yes.
She's back.
I'm back.
With her potions books, and she's going to be sharing a colour full, well, it's not a colour, it's a colourway, full of autumnal promise.
Absolutely.
And do you know what's really exciting? Today, Kay's going to be sharing with you a brand new technique that she's never shown you before.
That is true.
And it is properly like potions making. Let's not give too much away, though, because it's all to come later on in the show.
Don't say anything.
When you say full of autumnal promise, what does that make you think of?
Oh, lovely walks with crispy leaves and cool air and hats and loveliness.
And unbelievably, there is more than a hint of autumn in the air. And when I talk about...
Absolutely loving it.
A hint of autumn in the air, I'm talking the low sun. You can see it in the mornings.
There's definitely, yeah.
You go out in the morning, the sun is low. It's got a very special feel.
Yeah.
Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness.
I'm starting to see changing leaves in the trees as well.
That's the next thing. It's definitely there. There's leaves on the ground.
There is. I'm not sure if they're just from last year.
They're not from last year.
Oh, right.
Are you joking?
I don't know. Because how can they be from this year, leaves on the ground?
What are you talking about? They can't be from last year. They'd be super leaves.
I suppose it depends on the trees, because we've got 3 trees outside our
window
here. And I think they're rowans. I think that's what they're called. They've got like little red berries on them. And 2 of them are really golden already, and I was worried because I was thinking, oh my gosh, are they dying, those trees?
I don't think there's anything to worry about, because you're seeing it all through the woods.
So I've been paying attention when I've been walking, and I am seeing turning leaves on lots of trees.
But look, we can't just throw summer out.
Can we not?
No.
Why?
I'll tell you for why. Because this has been a summer of discovery.
Right.
Now, you know, in those films, I'm not sure if it's cartoons, where you see on the ground there's like a comedy slippy patch where you're waiting for the person to walk through it.
Like a banana skin on the ground.
Well, or sometimes it's like...
I don't even know if you'd slip on a banana skin.
I know. Sometimes it's like a section of ice.
All right, okay.
Or like in Home Alone, where they put down oil on the floor.
Yeah.
If you want to make the perfect comedy slippy patch, I have the solution for you. Basically, what you do is you get Skin So Soft.
Oh,
you know the stuff which we've spoken about loads the last few episodes. Definitely put it on if you're going out in the bugs, because they stay away.
Yeah.
And make sure you put it everywhere. Covered that in episodes 80 and 81, I think. If you put it on in your house, now I think it would be even worse
on like wooden floors.
Imagine if you did it on a carpet, though. You'd need to wash your carpets.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't know if it was on the carpet, though, would you?
If you did it in the same place over and over again, it would probably darken.
Probably.
You do it on a wooden floor, you know, so you're like squirt, 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 rub, rub, rub. Oh, that sounds odd. And basically, it sort of drops.
It does.
Onto the floor, and I'm not joking you.
It is the slippiest thing in the world. It's dreadful, and the only way
getting it off is a nightmare.
Getting it off is a nightmare. I mean, I used sort of like I have these, for a quick clean of the kitchen floor, I have these big antibacterial wipes, floor wipes, and I just sort of rub those over, but that wouldn't work. I had to get like washing up liquid and squirt it all over the floor and then scrub it. and then clean it off. That was the only way I could get rid of it. It was so slippy.
Utter disaster.
So now Dan's banned. He has to go outside to put it on.
Anybody would be. Because
don't put it on
if
in
you
your
did it
house.
in your house, you would end up on the floor. I mean,
It's really slippy, like, especially if you've got hand-knitted socks on as well, you've got no hope.
You're going down, baby.
You're going down.
So that was our first moment of discovery. Our second moment of discovery came by accident because somebody forgot to order the peppermint tea.
This was kind of a disaster.
Oh dear.
That somebody was me.
It was. So, do you remember how we have waxed lyrical about how wonderful Booth's peppermint tea is? Well, we're here today to tell you it tastes like brown water.
No, it doesn't. I think the problem is because we've been drinking Birchall's peppermint tea. We spoke about Birchall's for a long time, and it's
Booth's we've gone on for way longer.
Yeah, Booth's we went on and on and on
Birchall's
about,
we've only started going on about since last October.
Well, Booth's is a supermarket, and you have to go to the supermarket to get that tea.
And it's a distance
away. They don't do like online. But Birchall's is an online company, so you can order online. And I discovered Birchall's when I was looking around for other peppermints, didn't I?
Well, we just got sick of having to go
to the shop to
we had to travel 40 miles.
Yeah, to get
and then
tea.
They only ever had 5 times 12.
Yeah.
So we could only ever come back with about 60 bags.
Yeah.
Whereas you now
I order boxes of 80 and I order like 3 or 4 at a time.
So we're golden, baby.
But I forgot to do it.
But look.
And we had a few days where we didn't have any and we had to drink Booths.
And initially we were like, it's fine. Because Booths was great.
Well, I thought there was something wrong, didn't I, the night that you gave me? I didn't know it was Booths. And I tasted it and I'm like...
This tastes rubbish.
Have my taste buds gone off or something?
This doesn't taste of peppermint anymore.
This doesn't taste right. And then Dan said, oh, it's Booths.
So we have now done the perfect test to sort of decide, because before it was difficult because we were like, we're not really sure when you move from one to the other after drinking Birchall's for so long and then going back to Booth's thinking everything's going to be fine, not going in with a preconceived idea that Booth's was going to taste terrible because we thought it was good. It wasn't good.
No, Birchall's is the best peppermint we've ever had. It's so minty.
And our fear is this.
It's just gorgeous.
Our fear is when we had Booth's and we had any other peppermint tasted like brown water and Booth's tasted a lovely fresh pepperminty taste.
Yeah.
Now, Birchall's is so good, it makes Booth's taste like the other ones.
It really is.
So
good.
What would the other ones taste like now to us?
And I've also had normal tea from Birchall's as well. You know what I mean?
Yes.
English tea.
Yes.
I've had normal English tea from Birchall's, and that is also absolutely fabulous. And they do a single blend called, I think it's Veruga, something like that. It's an area in Africa, I think, from memory. And I've had that one, and that is phenomenal. It's very different. It tastes, to me, it's got a hint of sort of Christmas about it. I don't know what it is. It's just a single blend black tea. It's fabulous. And now I've said that, I wish I'd ordered some more when I put that order in.
But look, that's it. It's now official. Summer's over.
Yes. Move on, everyone. It's nearly September.
It's time to look forward to, as Kay said before, crisp walks in the woods. It's the perfect time to start knitting, all those slightly thicker, warmer things as the weather starts to chill off.
I know we're saying this, and I know there's a lot of people in America that are currently experiencing quite a horrible heat wave, I think. So I'm really sorry about
absolutely.
that.
But let's look forward to autumn.
It's got to be,
I'm pushing you forward to the next season.
It's got to be getting better, hasn't it? Because we're nearly into September. A few days to September.
This is the month when the kids go back to school. The best bit of all is this is the month when you can probably, towards the end or the season, start pulling on those sweaters.
I can't remember the last time I wore a jumper.
And if you like sweaters, this is the show for you.
Oh, yes.
Because an old favourite makes its return in What's on Your Needles.
Yes.
And an oldish, well, not that old, except I do take a while to knit things, favourite, makes an appearance in What's Off Your Needles. Indeed. But not only that, if you're talking about old favourites, the prairie socks also make their official reappearance as their well, it's not, we shouldn't call it a relaunch.
It is kind of a relaunch.
But it sounds like the old pattern was rubbish.
No, it's effectively the same
You've just
design.
updated it.
It's the same design, I've just refreshed it. Refresh. There you go.
Refreshed.
That's a better word, isn't it?
So enough chat. Well, there's lots more chat to come, but let's be a bit more focused as I ask Kate Jones, what's on your needle?
So my first thing is a new pair of socks. I finished a bunch of socks recently, and I'll show you a couple of the ones I finished in what's off my needles. But that meant I'd only got one pair of socks on the needles, and that's a design pair for later in the year. So I thought, right, that gives me permission, doesn't it, to cast on something new. So I was really excited. So I went into my stash, I went shopping in my stash, because I think we should do more of that. I know it's so tempting, isn't it, just to buy the new and the shiny when you see it. And I've done that many times, but then I put it on my shelf or in a little drawer thing, and you kind of forget what you've got, don't you? So I spent some time going through all of my stash, and I wanted a striping yarn. I bought this skein, I think the back end of last year, and I'll pop it on the blocker. I haven't finished the first sock, but I'm not far off. It's just fabulous. The yarn is gorgeous. Look at, oh my word, look at that. Just take a moment. I'll just hold it there for a second so that you can just enjoy the gorgeousness of that yarn. Is that not beautiful? Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm looking at it now thinking it's just so pretty, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, as you can see, this is a plain vanilla sock. It's just stocking stitch, because what I wanted to do is try out this heel. Now this heel is the one that I've called my butterfly heel, and it's the heel that was in my mini sock bunting that I showed you last time. And also I've just put it into a Knitting University pattern, which the design for that, the tutorials for that I've just finished, and that was
the pattern as well.
And the pattern,
Pattern and tutorials. You are exactly right. They've just finished this week.
Yeah, it was the cozy reading socks. It was a DK weight pair of socks held together with mohair. I showed you a couple of episodes back the finished pair, and that also used this heel. So I really wanted to try it in a fingering weight pair of socks.
Well, you had lots of people asking, didn't you?
I did. I had lots of people asking if I'd do a design with this heel in fingering weight.
Lots of our Bakery Bear patrons have been knitting the cozy reading socks and then saying, "Oh my goodness,
yeah,
it would be so lovely in fingering weight too."
Yeah, and I had already swatched it actually. I had tried it. I have like this tube that I use for design sort of planning, and I just knit one into that just to try it and sort of stuck it on my foot, and I thought, that's pretty good. So I thought, right, okay, it's time to try it in an actual sock. So I've put it into this one, and I'm really pleased with it. I've actually put this on my foot and it fits really well. Now I did use 2.5mm for these because, well, two reasons. One, the yarn is lovely and plump. I'll tell you what the yarn is in a second, but the base is gorgeous. It's really round and really plump, so I thought, right, I'm going to use 2.5mm for these. But also because I'm going to give these to Bryony, and she likes socks that have got a little bit of ease in them, positive ease. So I'm going to do this pair with 2.5mm, see how they get on. I'll give them to Bryony, see how she likes them, see how they fit. I'll try them on as well. And then I think I'll knit another pair using my normal 2.25s. And if that works out as well, then I'll maybe put a pattern out for these. But this heel, I'll hold it a bit closer, kind of looks like a short row heel. And it's worked in the same way as a short row heel. You work it, I started at the top, worked down, and then the heels worked just on half of the stitches, back and forth. You finish the heel and then you rejoin in the round and carry on. But it's not a short row heel. I don't like working short row heels. I've tried them several times, and I just don't like the process of doing the short rows. I don't know what it is. It's just not my thing. So I'd kind of put it to bed and just thought, well, that's that in terms of that kind of a heel. And then I came across this technique. I thought that looks really interesting. So I tried it and I changed a lot of things on it because it was a little bit fussy the way that some bits were worked, and I just changed quite a lot of it to make it suit the way that I wanted to knit it. And then I swatched it, I put it into those mini socks, works beautifully. It works really well with the DK socks. A lot of people are telling me they fit great. So I thought, right, it's okay. It's time to try it in a fingering weight sock. And it's done with increases and decreases. It's not done with short rows. It's you decrease and then you increase back up. So the reason I called it a butterfly heel is because if you were to sort of lay it flat out, the heel, it would be shaped kind of like a butterfly. So I will show you the yarn now. Oh, look. How pretty is that?
It's like refreshers.
It's just gorgeous. This is from Creolien. Would that be how you say that? Creolien Design. And she's in the Netherlands. So it's a European shop. This particular colourway is called Rainbow Breeze. And there's 15 different colours in it. And the base, it is a 75-25, as you can see, but it isn't the base that sort of most dyers dye on, and the base that I'm familiar with. It's not that base. It's really round and really plump, and it's got, I don't know, it reminds me of the base that Nicole C. Mendez uses. And interestingly, she's in Germany, which is right next door to the Netherlands. So I don't know, I can't say it's exactly the same base. I think Nicole's might even be a bit plumper. It's, it must be from a, a European supplier, I'm presuming, but it's a gorgeous base. I'm absolutely loving knitting with it. It's really, really lovely. I'll show you again. Don't know if you can see just how round and plump it is. And it feels so nice. It just feels so nice. It's it's really soft, but it's gorgeous. I really love it. I've ordered another skein from her actually because I loved it so much. The one that I ordered was a club. I don't know if it's still there, but it was a mystery self-striping club, and it ships I think the beginning of September. So I'm hoping it might be a touch autumnal, but whatever will be lovely, I'm sure. So I would definitely recommend this shop. It's really, really lovely. And the heel I've just knit with Cascade Heritage. I don't know if this is white or snow. I'll have to check. The ball band's not inside, but I can find out by just comparing two skeins together. I'm not sure. It could be white, it could be snow. It's one of those two. So I think I've got only maybe half an inch or an inch more to go. Might not even be that, looking at how close it is to the end of the blocker actually. But that needs to go up there. When it's blocked, it'll be more like that. So really, I'm just loving it, and I love working that heel. I'll show you. I'll take it off the blocker and I'll show you how it looks. So it looks like a shorter heel looks when you work it. So you end up with your heel here. So I've worked down the foot, I then put the heel in, the foot, that's the leg. I worked down the leg, put the heel in, and then now I'm just working down the foot. So it makes knitting a sock so easy, doesn't it? And so I'm thrilled to, fingers crossed, if it works out. Fit-wise, I want to make sure that it's a good fit. Generally, if it fits me really well and it fits Bryony really well, that's a good guide for me, because I've got a really high arch and Bryony is also wide across that part of her foot. She's inherited my ankles, I think.
So it's a high arch, a high instep.
High instep.
It's fine. Yeah. I would talk about arches too. So
I don't mean arch, do I? I mean instep, because your instep.
You do have high arches.
I do have high arches underneath my foot.
Yeah.
But you all know what I mean.
So what's an instep?
The instep is across the top of your foot, isn't it? That's your instep.
Right. I didn't know that.
That's the bottom of your
foot. So high arches then have got nothing to do with high instep.
No, it does. If you've got a high arch, I think that makes your instep.
Right.
Wide. I don't know. But everybody's feet are so different, aren't they? You know, some people are not very wide across. The widest part of your foot is from the back of the heel, then going like that.
My instep's massive then.
Yes.
Yes.
It is. Because your instep's huge, because Dan's got massively wide feet as well as like hugely long. So yeah, loving these socks. I'm going to get on and finish the pair so that Bryony can get them on her feet, try them out this heel, and then I will choose some yarn to maybe do one for a pattern with that heeling.
I think that foot size is something that is so interesting when it comes to sock knitting, because
it's so variable.
as a beginner to intermediate sock knitter, knowing what to do to deal with all the different sort of elements, what heel to put in, when do you need like more stitches to pick up, down the sides. You've said to me, it's with me, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you go a bit longer on the heel flap.
I do.
And that's because I've got such a big instep.
Yes. Yeah. I think as a starting point, if you've never knit socks before and you wanted to knit a pair of socks, I would recommend you doing a heel flap and gusset. I know that it's a more difficult technique, but...
You've got more chance of it fitting, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just start off with a basic sock with a heel flap, heel turn, gusset pickup, knit a pair, see how it fits, and from that you can then work out whether you need to adjust it.
So let's say you've knitted your first pair of socks and it's tight across the top, the instep.
Yeah.
What should you do?
The best and easiest thing to do is to extend your heel flap,
which then will give you more.
Knit it longer.
Right.
So for example, on a 64 stitch sock, generally a pattern will tell you to knit 32 rows. You just need to knit more rows, because what that will mean then is you're picking up, it will lengthen that fabric on the back of your heel, so that will give you more room there, and then it also means you're picking up more stitches, which means you'll have more fabric over your instep as you're decreasing it, and that usually solves the problem.
So I tell you what we need to do.
What?
We need to do a tutorial, but it shouldn't be like a tutorial. Perhaps it should be like a design diary where we list down some of these questions that I would ask, because I have a feeling lots of people out there will have just been very interested. That felt like gold.
Did it?
It felt like gold to me as a beginner to intermediate sock knitter.
Now I want to sing Spandau Ballet.
Yes, and I think that would be so helpful to me. Not just once, but okay, I've done a bit, I've remembered a bit, you've told me about the heel flap, but there's like toes and cast-ons.
Yeah, you can also vary your heel turn.
Yes.
And that will give you more room as well.
And you see, I would forget a lot of this so I would constantly be referring to this. So I think this is something we should maybe look to do. But Kay has a question to ask me.
Dan Jones.
Yes.
What's on your needles? I've no idea. Your desk area is bare.
Well, look, it's the great big...
Look what's back out.
It's the Cascades bag.
It's the Fox bag. Gosh, I bought that bag years ago. It was from a shop called Quince Pie on Etsy.
It's the Cascades. Many of you...
The Cascades is back.
New viewers may be wondering what this is.
Yeah, if you... gosh, that's true. I can't remember the last time you showed this. It's months.
Yeah. Well, I shall tell you. This is a pattern by Michelle Wong.
Yeah.
Who unfortunately doesn't design anymore.
No, she doesn't. That's right.
Which is such a shame because, as you can see...
Designs are fabulous.
As you can see from this design, it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's so well thought out. And
it's intense, isn't it?
Well, we start with the good stuff.
Okay.
And the good stuff is through this body, and there's not a lot of mistakes in this body.
No.
It's the hardest thing I've ever tried to knit. And a couple of years ago, when I cast this on, you may recall that the pattern was extremely challenging to decipher. And it took me quite a lot of effort to decipher it. I mean, it's a paper pattern, so I can't really show you too much. No. But what I had to do was I had to make an awful lot of notes on the pattern to help me remember some of the techniques, but also to save me having to flick forward 15 pages, flick back. And by the time you've done that, sometimes you've forgotten where you are in the pattern, especially if you're part way through a row, and especially if the row looks like a paragraph in a novel, which many of these rows do. Yeah. So I put in lots and lots of notes and things, and that enabled me to get through the body and the arms and to get it all together.
Shall I hold it up to me?
Yeah, by all means.
Might be helpful.
So got through it, and then got to the point where I'd done lots of raglan decreases, lovely raglan decreases, and I love raglan decreases. I think they're
It's
just
nice and
great.
long. Gosh, it's lovely and long. It's going to be great.
So got through to the final stage,
Okay.
literally the last 45 rows, and it was just mind-bendingly complicated. And do you know what? I don't think it's necessarily Michelle Wong's fault completely, because I think what's happened is her design has been put into a formula, a template, which is from Brooklyn Tweed, and I don't like that template.
I agree. I don't think it is Michelle Wong.
I don't think it's Michelle Wong.
I think it is the way that Brooklyn Tweed
Yes.
have formatted it.
It's not an easy read, so I put it away.
Yeah.
I put it away on the sort of thinking that Kay and I would sit down, and using her skill and my knowledge of the pattern together, we would have a go at it. But months turned into
I don't know how long it's been.
an awfully long time, and it just kept being put back and put back and put back. And it was you who went and got it out.
I did, because I said, you know what, I'm going to look at this
So she went and got it
and
out.
see if I can figure it out. And the problem was, I mean, I could figure it out.
Yeah, so
but
Kay gets it out. Kay looks at the pattern.
the problem was, because I haven't knit this whole thing, I didn't know what
Any of the techniques.
any of the, like, the way that it's written, the shorthand sort
There's
of
lots
thing.
of very specific things going on in here.
I didn't know what that meant, and because
Yeah.
the pattern, I found it so difficult to negotiate and to, because it's written and charted.
Yeah, the thing is though,
I don't know what it is about
it's
the
not
charts.
charted
I
up
don't-
here.
No,
It's only written up
no,
here.
it's just written. The bit you're on now, because you're on the very last bit. It is only written. That's right.
The charts
And-
with notation are understandable. The charts on their own, as Kay's saying, really weren't.
No.
You had to look at the chart and a bit of the words.
Yeah, and then I said I could do it, but what it means is I'm first of all going to have to learn the whole pattern.
It would have just taken forever.
And it would have taken forever. So Dan said, look, I'll just pick it up and I'll just sit with you and I'll ask you certain bits. If I need your help, I'll ask you. And that's what we've done.
Yes.
And you've worked through how many rows?
Well, so I sat down and I thought, right, okay, here we go. So I know this pattern. I know all the shorthand. So I sat down to do the first row, and I'm not kidding you.
No,
the first row took me 1 hour.
It did. Just for one row. Because what we're doing now is we're doing the sort of neck shaping. Can you see it's been bound off here? But it's been bound off in steps. So you're actually working flat now.
Yeah.
Now
And do you know
that
what?
complicates everything.
It does.
Because
But do you know what the funny thing is? And this is such a learning thing for me. I am actually enjoying working flat.
well, that's brilliant. That's really good to know that.
So because I've now knitted,
that opens up so many more designs.
I've knitted 7 rounds now, and it's taken me hours to do this.
But they're getting shorter because you're binding off at the beginning of every row.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
on rows now, not rounds.
Yes.
But the problem with going from in the round to flat is that the pattern now has got to be worked every other round from the purl side.
So I'd never done
No, and
twisted stitches.
No, it's not as simple as thinking, well, the purl side is just knits and purls, because it isn't. Because sometimes it's fallen that the purl side is like a cable row.
Well, I just fudged it. We spoke about
Yeah.
it, and I just did 1 extra round so that I made it full.
So, yeah,
I
whether
think
we
that's
did-
what she intended.
And even like doing the twisted stitches from the purl side, you've really got to think. The brain power. And I know a lot of
But
people who
also-
have knit this and seem to sort of get on with this bit really well.
Just doing a slip purl is.
You must
is
be
quite
like
fun.
geniuses to.
The bottom line is, if you go and you look on Ravelry at the neck section,
Which I did.
none of them look great.
No, and also in the pattern, in the written pattern, you can see on the front page the neckline is covered over by a shawl.
And there's a reason for that.
Well,
Because-
I went hunting And, you know, why would you cover up the neckline like that in the design? That just rang alarm bells for me. So I actually looked on Ravelry, and when you look on Ravelry, there's one picture where the jumper is laid flat just on the ground. So I looked at that picture and I zoomed in, and it's really not perfectly neat around the neck.
It's because you start to lose.
You start to lose the pattern.
Understandably, because you're decreasing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one. You started to find other people's
as well,
and
some
they
of
all
them,
looked the same.
Yeah, some of them were really good, and you know I think they must have just sort of gone their own way with it. Because what you've got to do once Dan's bound off here is we need to then pick up all those stitches and knit the neckband.
That'd be amazing when I'm doing that.
That won't, you know, I'll pick up the stitches for you, and then you can knit the neckband.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that we're casting off in steps like that is to give shaping to the neck.
Yeah.
To make it curved, because it won't look like steps once you pick up those stitches.
No.
It'll be curved. But I think it's a very complicated way of getting that neckline.
Look, the bottom line is I'm doing it now. So hopefully sometime in 2022.
I'm going to be wearing that in like October.
Sometime
hopefully.
in 2022.
No.
I'll finish it.
I want to wear it this year.
Well, look, I'm knitting it now. So I'll get it finished. And that'll be lovely. But I can tell you this, I don't like it.
It's so complicated. And
all I can do now is when I sit down for probably an hour and a half. I'll get maybe 2 rows, 3 if I'm lucky done.
Yeah.
And I'm so sick of it.
That's no fun, is it?
No, and what's frustrating me is it's hard to read the rows. So I feel like that mistakes are happening. I feel like
because they're all squashed up together.
Yeah.
There's no gaps between the rows. You know.
All I know is the pattern seems to look okay, which is great. But I feel like I'm getting confused with stuff. I feel like I'm getting confused with decreases because it's just too complicated.
Yeah.
But I'll finish it, and even if it looks awful,
it won't look awful. It won't look awful,
and that's lovely. What else is on your needles?
We will do it. Right, I've got. In fact, all 3 of my projects are new.
Cool.
I've just realised that's exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't have a jumper to show you. I'm really sorry.
But that's fine because I do the jumpers. Kay does all the lovely stuff.
You know, I've made tank tops for you, haven't I?
Many tank tops. You've made cardigans. You've made tank tops.
I do kind of have a little feeling to make you another tank top, actually.
Well,
I kind of want you to have a sort of burnt orangey chestnutty one.
Fine by me.
I think that'd look gorgeous.
That's fine by me.
So maybe I've said that now, haven't I? Maybe I will.
I tell you what would be perfect is
and you knit them flat, and I like knitting garments flat.
Would be in the lightest possible yarn you could find.
Oh, like a fingering weight one.
No, you don't have to do fingering weight.
No.
Don't you pick whatever yarn you want, but it just wants to be light and airy.
Right.
So as light and airy as possible. Whatever that may be.
I'll think about that.
I've then got because one of them, I've got a medium one.
Yeah.
I've got a thick one.
Yeah.
And if I have a really light one,
I've done an Aran weight one.
Yeah.
I've done a DK weight one.
Yeah.
So maybe a sport weight one. I mean, sport weight yarn is difficult to find in this country, but it might be I could substitute it with a 4-ply, because sometimes a 4-ply is like sport weight, or it might be I can find a light DK. Okay, I'll think about that another day. Right. This is a new blanket.
Oh.
Now, there's a story behind this. This is a crochet blanket, and if you remember, I was crocheting a blanket with my birthday minis that were a gift from a very lovely friend. I got 50 10-gram minis from a friend.
We've spoken about this before. That's one stage up from a lovely friend.
What did I say?
A very lovely friend.
Oh, very lovely friend.
So you've got lovely friend, very lovely friend. If you're a friend, you're nowhere.
Yes, so I was crocheting a moss stitch stroke linen stitch, whatever you want to call it, blanket, if you remember, with my birthday minis. Now, I was having a couple of issues. Well, only really one issue with this blanket. And I took a photo of it, so I'll get Dan to pop the photo in and you can see what I'm talking about, because I've actually ripped it out. Don't have a heart attack, everyone, when I tell you that. It's fine. I spoke to my friend about it and Dan said you don't need to ask her. I said, I know, but I just feel like I need to tell her that's what I'm doing. So anyway, yeah, if you look at the photo, you can see that at the bottom edge, the cast on edge, there's this huge ripple going on. And what was happening was where I'd cast on, it was way wider. It sort of looked like this shape, because there was this big ripple. And at first I thought, I didn't mention it when I was making it because I thought it'll probably work its way out. Well, it didn't. I'd crocheted a good section and it didn't. And then someone mentioned, I can't remember where, it was in a comment somewhere, might have been on a Ravelry thread, mentioned that particular stitch, if you're making it into a square blanket, it does have an inclination to ripple because the stitch pattern is quite dense, quite condensed. It doesn't really stretch out this way. So particularly as well if you do a loose cast on, which I kind of did do a loose chain cast on because that's what I normally do for a granny stripe, but that just exasperated the ripple. And it just wasn't coming out very wide. I think because it's a dense stitch, it was doing this. And I was used to the granny stripe, which more did this. So it sat there for a few weeks. I didn't work on it because I was resting my shoulder anyway. And then one day I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to do something else with these minis because I just couldn't live with that ripple. And I thought, even if I border it, I just don't think it's going to solve the problem. And I think it's just an inherent thing with that particular stitch. So I ripped it out and I've started a new crochet blanket and it's fabulous. Ages ago, I saw a stitch on Blossom Crochet is the video that I followed on YouTube, and it's a V-stitch. So I watched the Blossom Crochet tutorial and I thought, this is brilliant because it's just a one row repeat. It's the same every single row and it's dead easy and it looks fantastic. I think normally with the V-stitch, all the blankets I sort of saw, they were worked kind of one row in a different colour. You'd change colours each row and it was with a much thicker yarn. So you get that kind of, you see the V-stitches more. I'm changing colour every 10 grams because I'm using the whole 10 grams. So I'm getting more of a stripe with it, but it looks amazing. And I'm not getting any problems with the rippling thing that was going on. So I'll show you the blanket and I'll tell you how many, I can remember how many I chained. Look, look at my lovely blanket. Can you see how pretty it is? I'll hold it close so you can see. Oh, isn't it lovely? It's so pretty. Can you see all the little V's? I think you can. It's so nice. And look how lovely and wide it is. I chained 230. I think the multiple was a multiple of 3 plus 5. And then I thought to myself, well, if it's a multiple of 3 plus 5, isn't that the same as a multiple of 3 plus 2?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But in the video, she said it's a multiple of 3 plus 5. So I did that. So I'm sure it was 230 that I chained. And I'm getting a blanket that's about 3 foot wide, which for a lap blanket I think is perfect. And each of my 10 gram minis, I'll fold it over so I can hold it a bit easier. Each of my 10 gram minis is giving me an inch of fabric. So that means when I've got 50 in there, it'll be 50 inches long. So I think 36 by 50, that's a really good size. So I can use all of my minis and I'll have a really nice size blanket. So can you see, I measured it this morning and it's about an inch for each colour. And I'm magic knotting, so I'm using every last bit of the yarn. And the other thing I'm doing, which I battled with, because I didn't want to do this, because I'd been given them in an order, so I was opening one every day and I was numbering them and I wanted to put them in that order. However, I realised that my brain doesn't work like that. And part of the joy for me is choosing the next colour and seeing what's going to come next. And I really like going through the bag. I mean, look at my bag. And I really like going through it and thinking, right, what colour's going to look good next to that one and what's going to work in the sequence. So that's a lot of the joy for me. So I decided just to let that go. I can just do that. I'm allowed to choose the colour sequence. And that's what I've been doing. And isn't it just beautiful? I also love that the edges are bang straight. So if I didn't need to border it, I don't think I'd need to border it. I think they're so lovely and straight, it would be fine. And I'm doing the same thing that I did actually with the moss stitch one, is because what you do at the end, you do a treble as the last thing at the end of each row, and then you chain 3. And then that chain 3 becomes the treble for the next row up. So I've marked the 3rd chain of that chain 3, so I know that when I come back across, that's the stitch that I need to do the treble in, the final treble, and that's working brilliantly well. And it means I've got this perfectly straight edge, and I've no danger of putting my crochet hook in the wrong little chain. So that's working great. So I'm using a 3mm hook, as I pretty much always do actually for fingering weight. That was the other thing with the linen stitch one. Because it's a dense stitch, you have to use a hook size that's really bigger than you would normally use. So I think I was using a 3.75 for that. And I really love using a 3mm hook with fingering weight. So that was really good as well, that I could use that. So I'm using one of the Clover Amore, is it? I love these. Perfect crochet hook for me. Absolutely perfect crochet hook. Really, really love them. So I think that's everything about that blanket. I'm just loving it. To be honest, I'm having to stop myself working on it because you know what I'm like with the old crochet. I have to be careful of the aches and pains because I'm old now. My favourite yarn so far, I think, is this purple. That was Ducky Darlings. I remember that one. That was Ducky Darlings. This one is Mr. and Mrs. Rabbit, the pink. This one, I think, is West Green Loft. Just lovely, lovely yarns. I did have one problem, and let me find the yarn. And I'm going to solve it. So this one I'd worked into the blanket, but can you see the blue? The blue was stacking up, so I was getting a vertical stripe of the blue all the way along the section because it was stacking on top of each other. And I thought, just go with it, you know, I can't be so controlling over the yarn. But I did almost all of it into it and I couldn't do it. So I pulled it out and I have a solution. What I'm actually going to do, because I'm determined to put all of these yarns in, it's not the yarn, it's me. But I'm determined to put them all in. So what I'm going to do is as I work it, I'm going to sort of cut little sections out of the yarn and magic knot it back together. And that will then avoid those blue sections stacking. It'll be sort of more random. So that's what I'm going to do.
Look, it's another sleeve. It's the second sleeve for the anniversary jumper. And it's Let Lopey yarn. And it's just marvellous. I really have come to appreciate it now. I think that some of the colourways, we spoke about this before, some of the colourways on the Ridarri, specifically the black, were unbelievably loosely spun, which resulted in it being quite challenging to knit. Whereas all the colourways I've hit with this one, maybe there's an element of getting used to it, and perhaps that is a point to note if you're about to start knitting with Let Lopey. It does take a little bit of time to get used to, and perhaps there is a big element of that actually, if you think it through.
Yeah.
So it's all the way through the Ridarri, but there's no question that the black on the Ridarri was looser than any of the ones that I've used here.
I agree.
Now the challenge with the anniversary was, as we discovered on the first sleeve, that the motif did not fit evenly around, which is just odd.
Yeah.
So I can't have that.
No.
That would absolutely do my head in. That was a bit like when I was knitting the Solia by Anna Maltz, and the lace pattern wasn't even.
There was just a big gap on this side. There was just nothing there, was there?
So it took a lot of effort that was all documented in the very first season of Journey to the Centre of the Yoke.
You did a lot of jiggling.
I did a lot of jiggling, and eventually came up with a solution where I could keep more of the lace there. So here, is a much easier solution, because all I did was I looked for a motif that's in the book, because there's lots of different motifs for all the different. So there's a boy one, a girl one, a man one, and a woman one.
And a child one. It was the child one. Oh, that's what you mean by boy and girl.
Yes,
right.
yes. And so I used one of the child ones, and it works great.
It looks brilliant.
Yes. So
Looks like snowy mountains.
yes, knitting up the lovely sleeve, increasing every so often, using the lovely cubics, which I love, absolutely love. That's
Knit Pro cubics, the metal ones.
Yes, and they're just marvellous. And yeah, that's it. So sleeve number 2, nearly finished.
So then you'll be joining
I will.
and
then we're into the good stuff.
then you're off.
Then you're into the great stuff.
So you've got this one on the go and then the Cascades. Is that the only two? No, you've got another one.
I do. Alexander.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I'm currently knitting
I can't keep up with his jumper
prowess.
Yes.
I'm currently knitting through the Alexander, which I haven't shown you that for a little while, just because it's all plain knitting down the bottom. And then the fun starts around about here, which is different, because you've got a section of colour work prior to then the yoke appearing above. So fun and games later on. So get through a bit more of that, and I'll show that to you soon.
And you're still enjoying the yarn?
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
So that's my lovely anniversary second sleeve.
Excellent.
What else is on your needles?
Well, I'm really sorry, but it's another blanket.
That's okay. Don't know why I put it that way.
I started another blanket and I just had an urge. I had an idea for a new blanket. And I just thought I'm going to do that. Oh, and I'm keeping it in my lovely taffeta bag. Can you remember? Oh, look at the shine on that.
What happened to the shawl stroke blanket? Did you finish that? Or
The shawl stroke blanket. That one. So I've got it out actually. It was just over there. This was my Moss Stitch triangular shawl stroke blanket. Can you remember I made this a little while ago? And I got it out because I'm going to give it a nice soak. I never blocked it actually. I'm going to give it a nice soak, and I'm going to give this to my mum because she really likes sort of little shawls to pop over her shoulders in the winter because she has painful shoulders. So I thought I'm going to give her that, and I think she'll get more use out of it than I will. And it's super pretty, isn't it? I mean, that's the linen stitch I was talking about, and I love it. And it worked perfectly well in the triangle shaped one, didn't have a problem at all. So I had a thought for a new blanket, and I just thought, oh, I'm just going to have a go at that. And I've just carried on with it because it's so fun. And it's kind of a variation on my Stitching Time blanket, which is right here actually. So my Stitching Time blanket is a pattern that came out a few years ago now. This is a smaller version of it. My original one had 9 mitered squares in each block, and then it's bordered by a different colour and then sewn together. This was a smaller version. I just did 4 squares, but it's kind of a variation on that. So my idea was to have just 1 mitered square in the middle, and then to do a couple of rounds of log cabin around each mitered square. I'm absolutely loving it. So I think I started with the pink. So here was my first one. So I've got a lovely little square in the middle and then 2 rounds of log cabin. So it's kind of like a mitered log cabin, I suppose. That's just what I've been calling it in my head. And I so enjoyed doing it that I did another in green. And then I did another in yellow. And another in purple. And then finally, I'm just on the final round of an orange one, and they're so fun. It's just fantastic. So yeah, I started with the mitered square in the middle, which is exactly the same technique as in my Stitching Time blanket. So it's just like you're doing square 1 of the Stitching Time blanket, but then you don't do any more mitered squares. It's just 1, and then you just pick up and do a little border at the top, and then you turn and you pick up again and turn until you've gone all the way round, and then you do the same thing in the next colour. And I suppose you could then keep going. You could keep going and do bigger ones, but my idea was I just wanted to keep them to this lovely size. I think it's just a really nice size, and I've left the last stitch live. You can see I've put a a marker just on the last stitch, and the reason I've done that is because I'm undecided as to what I'm going to do about the border. Because what I've done with these, if I hold a couple side by side, what I've done is I've got dark centres, so I've gone from dark to light at the outside. So when they're all sewn together, I think it's going to look so lovely to have all of those dark centres. Can you see how pretty that will be?
Yeah.
Be really nice. So I'm sticking to the same sort of colour for each, and I'll obviously have to repeat colours. There's only so many colours, isn't there? And then my idea was that maybe I pulled this brown out of my stash. I like brown. I think brown is an underrated colour. So my idea was that maybe I will just do one garter round, so 2 rows, if you know what I mean, just one garter ridge. I couldn't think of the words. Just one garter ridge in the brown all the way around each of the squares, and then sew them together with the brown, and then that way you'll just have a nice fine brown border going around to join them all together. It'd be quite delicate, but I think it will just enhance all of the colours by having that dark, just that thin dark border around them all. So I might do that, but I'm undecided. I'm just enjoying making the little squares at the moment. I'm just really enjoying it. I have written down what I've done, but like I said, it is just really a variation on my stitching time. But maybe I'll do something for our patrons if there's interest. I think my favourite one has been this orange one, surprisingly. I'm not normally an orange person, but I'm really loving these yarns. And the centre one was one of these beautiful little minis. I got this from Loop in London. I barely used any of it. And
was it £1 million? Oh,
probably, yeah. I think it was. Everything is from Loop, isn't it? You need a second mortgage to go yarn shopping in Loop, I think. But this one it's just 20 grams. Yeah, 20 grams of fingering weight. And I just love the name of it. It's called Friday Chupa Chups. And why not have a Chupa Chup on a Friday, I say. So that's the centre one. And then this middle one, this was one of my BTS colours that I dyed up at Christmas for my advent calendar. And then the final one, I've no idea, it came out of my stash, but it's very pretty.
Cool.
So really loving that. I'm just going to carry on. I'm using 2.75mm needles, which it just gives really lovely gauge, I think, with fingering weight for blankets.
I think it's fair to say that the season with the most beautiful colours is the one that's upcoming, and that's autumn. And there's no better way that we could celebrate and start to get excited about that upcoming season than with a very special My Favourite Colourways.
Over the last 6 years, I have created more colourways than I can remember. Hidden away in my library is the little book that contains nearly all my secrets. But which do I like best? Well, I thought it would be fun to find out, so in this show, that's what we're going to be doing. I'll be taking you from undyed skein to finished colourway. Because it's time for us to discover Welcome everyone to a new My Favourite Colourways. Now this time I actually did a little, not a poll, but I asked in our patron Facebook group if anyone had any sort of preferences for what they might want to see this time. Not necessarily a particular colourway, but just a theme or a favourite colour or that kind of thing. And it was overwhelmingly for an autumnal colourway. Now, I was actually going to do that, so I mean, that's perfect. And the reason I was going to do it is because we're now, thankfully, at the end of August, so we're almost into September. So, you know, autumn is nearly here, isn't it? And I've seen leaves turning already on trees, and the blackberries are, you know, there's masses of blackberries, so definitely seen signs of autumn. And touch everything wood, we've kind of had a really good, typically English summer. It's been, you know, it's been great. We just had 1 week where it was really hot, and then other than that, it's been sort of maximum of around about 20 degrees C, which is just brilliant. You know, that is absolutely our ideal summer. Not too much sun, fantastic. But anyway, we are now approaching autumn, so let's do something a bit sort of autumnal that makes you think of walking in crisp leaves and putting your hats on and knitting up your mittens and all of those lovely things. So I looked through my books. This book actually is my kind of neat and tidy book. I've got a couple of others that I used right from the very beginning of when I was dyeing, so it's got all of the sort of notes for them. But what I did a while ago is I looked through those two sort of scruffy notebooks and put them into this neat and tidy one. And this one's in this neat and tidy. Look how neat it is compared to the other one, which if I showed you the inside of the other one, some of the recipes I can't even decipher. But I looked through this one and I found a colourway that I actually only dyed to sell, I think once or twice. And I double checked on my Etsy sales just to make sure that I did actually put this in the shop, and I did, it was there. And that also just reminded me on what the colour looks like, which was great. I had it in my sort of head what it was like, but I wasn't quite sure. It's hard to describe. It's got a lot of gold tones, there's some browns in there. There's also, surprisingly, some pinks in there, but you don't necessarily see the pink. And that's because the technique I'm going to use is one that I haven't done before, and I've used this technique on several of my colourways actually, but this is the first one that I've looked at and I thought, oh yes, I'm going to do that one because I haven't shown you this before. I'm dyeing it on a base which I've used one almost identical to it actually. It's just a different colour of stellina in it because they didn't have the one I normally use. So the colourway name is Autumn Walk, which I think is just perfect. And oh, I can't wait to get going on this one because I really kind of want to knit up a pair of socks, I think, with this colour. Bryony loves autumnal colours, so I think it might be quite nice to knit up a pair, maybe crunkled socks. She loves crunkled socks. She's got a pair. Do you know the pair that I knit in the colourway that I did for my birthday, the 1971 colourway? She wears those almost continuously, except when they're in the wash. She absolutely loves them, so maybe I'll knit up another pair just like that. So enough kind of waffle about what we're going to do. We need to see exactly what we're going to need to dye up this lovely autumnal colourway. So let's pop over and have a quick recce of all the supplies. Okay, so what we're going to need to dye up our lovely yarn. First of all, yarn. Now I've got 2 skeins today. I haven't got an extra mini skein today because I think I'm going to snaffle one of the full skeins for myself. So I've just got 2 skeins, fingering weight yarn. I have used this base before, but it's got silver stellina, this one. I think previously I've always had gold stellina in it. And I've got 2 skeins and I've already popped them onto my cable ties. And what I've done with one of them already is I've kind of, I don't know how to describe this, but this is the one that I haven't done, so I'll show you. Now, sometimes with a skein, quite often actually, you will find that when you untwist it, it's quite round, and where the ties are, it's sort of folded in on itself because it's been twisted and packaged and all of that. What I find is if it's like this, if I was to dye this like this, you can find that the yarn sort of tucked away in the middle might not get any dye. So what I like to do is just sort of flatten out the skein, if that makes sense. So where the ties are, I just kind of get hold of it and I mean this one's not too bad, but I'll have a look at the tie. First of all, I'll sort of loosen it off, because sometimes the ties are really tight, and if they were tight like this, you can end up with a line across your yarn where the dye hasn't been able to go underneath. So I always make sure that the ties are nice and loose, and that when you hold the skein like that, it's nice and flat. So you've got as much surface area as possible exposed, rather than it sort of being folded in and have some tucked away inside. So I just go round the skein, loosening up the ties and just flattening that out. Sometimes you might find it's okay, and other times I find that it is sort of tucked inside. So just make sure they're nice and loose and everything is flat like that, so we've got a nice surface area to work on. So that's our 2 skeins already. So we've got our bowl for soaking and for rinsing, and then our dye pot, I use a stainless steel sort of casserole pot, nice and deep and wide. It's just a sort of standard, you can probably see the size if I hold it against myself, sort of standard size casserole pot if you just look in any cookware shop or whatever. Now once you've used any of your equipment for dyeing, you must only use it for dyeing. Don't use it for anything else. We've then got our mordant, which for me is citric acid. I always use citric acid. I don't like vinegar just because it smells so much and I find it much more difficult to store. Citric acid is what I use. You can get this very easily and it's food safe. There's no risks at all with that. It's what they put into fizzy sweets. If you ever eat fizzy sweets, that's what it is. It's the citric acid. Some rubber gloves. We've got my big spoon and then a measuring spoon, which as always with me is a 1/8 of a teaspoon measuring spoon. I got these in a pack with different sizes. I think they're like scientific measures, but again you can get these really easily. So 1/8 of a teaspoon. I've got my mask as always, some old tea towels just to protect your work surface, or you can use a piece of old oilcloth if you want to, that's really good. One extra thing we're going to need this time that I haven't used before, because this is the technique, the difference with the technique, we're going to need some kind of little thing, little vessel, little pot to mix some dry dyes in. So we're going to actually create our own dye blend with dry dyes. So I use, this is, I only use this for dyeing again, but I use just a little ramekin. I find these to be perfect, but you could just, if you've just had a yogurt, you could just rinse out the yogurt pot, dry it and use that. Anything really, anything where you can just use it. It's, it's clean and dry, use it to mix up your dye powders. But again, don't use it for anything else afterwards, just keep it for your dyeing. So now onto the dye colours. So this time there's 6 colours, but don't be daunted by that because we're going to actually, like I said, we're going to create our own dye blend. So we're going to use some of those colours to create our blend. So I've got 3 Dharma dyes and 3 Jacquard. Now I'll tell you the sort of rough shade, so if you want to substitute them with a different brand, then you can go ahead and do that, whatever is available to you. So I'll start with the Dharma dyes. First of all, we've got Pink Orchid. This is a hot pink, basically. So any sort of, whatever brand you're using, you want a hot pink. This one is seriously hot. So Pink Orchid. The next Dharma is Peach Blush. So again, it's a lovely shade of peach. You can substitute that with another shade of peach if it's a different brand. And then Ballerina Pink with Dharma. Now this is very similar to just pink from Jacquard. So if you've got that, you can just substitute, that'll be fine. So that's the 3 Dharma dyes, and then we've got 3 Jacquard. So we've got Chestnut, gorgeous colour, I use that a lot actually. Gold Ochre. It wouldn't be a colourway of mine really, would it, without Gold Ochre? So we've got some Gold Ochre. And then Sun Yellow. So sun yellow is a really bright yellow, really sort of quite acidy yellow, quite a bright yellow, but we don't use a lot of that. So that's everything we're going to need, and now it's time to soak our yarn. Okay, so we're going to soak the yarn, but as I've done before, because this has got stellina, we're not going to put any acid, any of the citric acid, into the soaking water. What you can do is you can actually overexpose the stellina to the acid, and that can dull it. So I always, when I'm working with a stellina yarn, I just give it its initial soak in just plain water. And it's nice and warm, just water from the tap. That's something to mention actually. The type of water that you've got in your house can actually make a difference to how the colourway comes out. It can influence it, because I know some people have very hard water, some people have very soft water. We're kind of in the middle here, we're not really hard or soft. And I think the level of hardness depends on the sort of minerals and things like that in the water. Lime, if it's like runs over limestone, I think it's affected by all kinds of things. And it's different certainly in this country, it's very different in certain parts of the country. And you'll probably know what sort of water you've got. You know, if you've got very hard water, you probably find that your kettle fills up with lime scale really easily, things like that. So that can affect your colourway, you know, how it comes out at the end. And some dyers, I think, do use, is it iodised water or some form of water that's like very, very neutral. I forget, I think it might be iodised. I don't know if I've got that quite right. But just bear that in mind, that if it does come out a little bit different, it could be that your water is slightly different to mine. So that's our yarn soaking away nicely. Give it a good half hour. Make sure that that water has really penetrated into all of the fibres. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is get everything ready, and we're going to mix up our dye blend. Okay, so before I just mix up the dye blend, I've popped on some water just to start heating up. I've got about half of my pot here is full of water. It's just gently heating, and I've put into this my citric acid. I've put about 2 tablespoons in. I never really know what the exact quantities is, you know, if there is an exact quantity to use, but I find that if I put in a couple of tablespoons, it always works. That's probably more than you need, but I always think it's better to have a bit more than a bit less. Whilst that's heating up, we are going to mix up our dye blend. So for the actual initial phase, if you like, of this colourway, we're going to mix up our own dye blend. So to do that, I've got 4 of the colourways here. I've got Ballerina Pink, Peach Blush, Gold Ochre and Pink Orchid. Now what I will do is I will tell you the sort of ratio that you should use, and then, you know, if you are dyeing more yarn, you can just sort of double that or whatever. So I'm just going to make up 1 batch, if you like. That will probably be too much to dye just 2 skeins of yarn, but what you can do is if you've got dye powder left over in your little container, you can just seal it over with some cling film, foil, whatever, and just keep it, and you can use it again next time. Just make sure you label it up so you know what it is. So the Ballerina Pink is the first colour we're going to pop in there, and we're going to use 2 parts Ballerina Pink. Now I'm classing 1 part as 1/8 of a teaspoon. So whenever I say, you know, half a part or 2 parts or 1 part, just think that 1 part is 1 of these 1/8 of a teaspoon. So I'm going to use 2 parts Ballerina Pink, so that means 2 teaspoons. So into the dye, that's 1, 2. I feel a bit like a mad scientist when I do this, when I create my own dye blends. You never know how it's going to work out. Sometimes it might not work out, it might be awful. sometimes it'll be absolutely beautiful. And the advantage of doing this is that no one is ever going to have a colourway exactly the same because you've blended it. So chances are, you know, I suppose it could happen, but it's unlikely. So that's the ballerina pink, and we've got 2 of the 1/8 of a teaspoon. Next is peach blush, and that's 1 part. So for me, that's 1/8 of a teaspoon. This one looks very brown, I always think, in the thing. Before I do that, I'm just going to give that a little wipe. So 1 part peach blush. Now onto the gold ochre, and that's 1/2 a part, so 1/2 of the teaspoon. And then the last one is the pink orchid. Now this one is the very bright pink. So we're just going to use 1/4 of a teaspoon. You can see just how vivid that is. You just want a little bit, so just 1/4. Okay, and now we're just going to give all these a lovely mix together. We really want to make sure that it's well mixed. Sometimes you can get little lumps of powder, so I tend to just sort of give those a little bash to get rid of the lumps, and then mix away. This colour will be, you can probably tell from the colours we put in there, but it's going to be very peachy. That's the sort of base colour. And then on top of that, we're going to add the other 2 colours that we've got to produce a very golden, peachy, slightly sort of, that chestnut is a, you know, it is a brown, but it's not a kind of tree trunk brown. It's more of a goldeny brown. It will come out different every time you do this, because unless you weigh your dye, which you could do, it's going to come out slightly different each time. But that, you know, that again, that's the fun of it, I think. And you will find that, you know, little particles of dye of the individual colours might well stick to little bits, and you'll see when we put it in exactly what it looks like. But that's had a nice blend now. So now we can pop our yarn into the pot. I'm just going to turn up the heat a little bit. Just make sure the skeins are not tangled. Give it a little squidge. So just give it a jiggle to release the fibres, and then it can go into the pot. So make sure that you sort of move the skeins around, because we want this to be random. There we go. And now we need to let that water come up to temperature. I'm just going to turn it up. It wants to be just to the point of simmering, and then you can just turn it down to its lowest setting so that it just stays hot. We don't want a rolling boil. We just want it to be nice and hot. So just a couple of minutes for that to come up to temperature. Okay, so our pot now is nice and steamy, and I always kind of just do that. I mean, it's up to you whether you want to or not, because I know how hot it needs to be, and it needs to be so hot that you can only do that. You know, you can't leave your finger in or anything, it would be too hot. So now we can get our dye in. So I'm going to take our blend, and I'm going to sprinkle in 2 of these 1/8 of a teaspoon. We've got 1 here. So I'm just going to go over and tap the spoon. I'm going to go in with another, and you can see the colour there. It looks quite bright at the moment, but but it does look a nice autumnal sort of orangey shade, which is what we want. In with the second one, all over, and then get your big spoon and just give it a little push down. It's a gorgeous peachy, orangey sort of shade. It's lovely. It's hard to tell in indoor light, I always think, but that looks good. Now we don't need to wait for this, because what I mean is we can just move that skein straight away. It doesn't matter about the sort of residual dye that'll be in the water because we're going to add more dye now. So I'm just going to lift it out, and at the minute you can see we've got a lot of dye in certain areas and then nothing in other areas. So what I'm going to do is just move it a little bit on the skein like that, just to redistribute where things are. And you can see there's actually not really any dye in there. It's gone straight into that yarn. And then back in the pot and just move everything around again. So same thing again, so 2 more 1/8 sprinkled over. And you can do this quite rapidly. It's a nice sort of relaxed technique. You don't have to be too careful. And then get your big spoon again, push that down, and then we're going to move it one more time. And now you can see we have got a bit of dye in there, so that's good. So move it around again, and you can still see we've still got quite a lot of white undyed areas, but we're now getting a nice sort of variegation going on. So again, back in. And I find actually that I think this must be dependent on whether you're left or right-handed. I usually find that the right-hand skein, the one that's sort of on this side, tends to get more dye, and I think that just must be the right and left-handed thing, I think. So I'm just sort of aware of that. And now I've got about an 1/8 left, which is perfect. I'm going to use up all of the dye powder, which is great. So instead of going in with my spoon, I'm just going to tap it from the container, just so we get all of it in. So I'm going to make sure that left-hand skein gets a bit more. And then back in. So now what we've got in there is a nice variegated sort of orangey peachy shade. And I'm going to go straight in and just move that around a little bit more because I want to get as much of that peachy shade into the rest of the skein as I can. And I've still got some areas which are much lighter. So back in. And now we're going to put in some chestnut. So we've got that beautiful blended colour. And now I'm going to put in those last 2 colours. So first of all, it's the chestnut. So I'm going to go in with about an 1/8 again of that, so a teaspoon. And just exactly the same as we did before. And you'll find that some areas it'll go onto the orangey bit, and then some will go onto the undyed bit, and you'll get, this was what will create different shades. I think that's probably enough actually. I've probably used about 3/4, not quite an 1/8. And then give that a little tap down. I'm just going to leave that to set for a few minutes. It looks quite intense at this stage, but don't worry, it's fine. So I'm just going to give that 5 minutes or so just to let that chestnut colour absorb into that layer, and then we're going to move it and just do a little bit more chestnut before going ahead with the final colour. So I'm going to give that 5 minutes just to set. Right, so that's just had a few minutes, and the way I tell if that's been absorbed is if you just grab a bit of water off the top with your big spoon and just let it drop, and just look at the water that drops down. That looked fairly clear, so I know that I'm good to go with that. So I'm just going to give that a little move around again, and you can see now it's a gorgeous shade of brown. I think that chestnut is lovely. So now we've got, if you like, 2 shades going on. We've got our blended shade, and then we've got that lovely chestnut. So it's a lovely variegation going on. So I'm just going to pop that back in and just add a bit more chestnut, not as much as last time. It's a lovely shade actually, isn't it? Really pretty. I'm just going to use maybe half of an 1/8 this time of the chestnut. Just go back around, just to catch some of those areas that we missed last time, and just to, you know, just to help with minimising that chance of pooling. don't mind a bit of, not striping, it's not even quite striping. I don't mind little sort of dashes of colour that repeat themselves, but I just really don't like pooling, so I do everything I can to avoid that. Can't always, because everybody knits differently, you know. Somebody might knit at a different gauge or knit it into a different project where it might end up looking a bit pooly, but I just try and minimise it. So again, I'm just going to let that set for a few minutes and then we'll be on to the final colour. Okay, right, time for the last colour. So another little move around, and at the moment it's actually really lovely. It's a very woodsy, autumnally look going on. But what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of lift it by adding in a bit of that very bright yellow. I do find, you know me by now, don't you, that I do like to add that gold at the end of some of the colourways. And this time we're going to add the bright yellow. Now it's a while since I dyed this, so I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen. So that's fun. So I'm going to use about 1/2 of an 1/8 of the sun yellow. Exactly the same again, just all over. And then in with your big spoon. Yes, I'm liking what that does to it. Now I'm going to move that straight away because I don't mind at all if some of that yellow is still in the pot. I doubt it will be, a tiny bit, but I do like what that yellow is doing to the skein. It's just brightening up those areas that just got a bit of the sort of chestnut shade. So I'm going to go in, and now that I know what that 1/2 and 1/8 look like, I'm going to bump that up a little bit. So it's almost a full 1/8 all over. And push that down. Now I'm going to judge this. My recipe, I only moved it and did that twice with the yellow, but I'm just going to judge it, and I might add a bit more because, you know, it's all about doing what feels right at the time for me with dyeing. So I'm going to move that around, have a little look, and I might decide just to add a little bit more yellow, because what the yellow will do as well to that orangey section is it will make it more peachy. I am going to add a little bit more and then we will be done. So you just judge it yourself, you know. You might be happy with the way it looks at this point and like the more brownish tones. I'm going to add a bit more yellow to give me a bit more gold. I'm doing it around those areas. I'm popping it over the bits which are orange as well in particular. And I think that's going to be good. It's going to be a lovely variegated yarn with some darker tones, some lighter tones, the brighter yellow. It should be lovely. Fingers crossed, everyone. So I'm going to put the lid on that pot. I can take my mask off at last. So I'm just going to let that come up to temperature again. It's almost there. It's really nice and hot. Turn it off and then we can pop it outside to cool. So there we go, that's our yarn all dyed up. It's outside, it's cooling away. So I will see you back in part 2 when we're going to bring it in, we're going to give it a rinse, and then we're going to get it dry. And I don't know, I'm just looking at the sky, but maybe it'll dry outside today, fingers crossed. So I will see you back soon.
My goodness, that looks so amazing, and you would never have guessed it when you saw the powder.
The powder.
The dyed powder.
The dyed powder.
You look at the dyed powder and you think, oh, that's going to come out strange. And then, my goodness, but then it's just fascinating, isn't it? The change that occurs when you stick that gold in.
Yes, you know how I feel about
It's unbelievable.
Jacquard's gold ochre.
It seems to
love
change.
affair with it.
It turns one thing that looks great into something completely different that looks even more amazing.
It was a different colour I did at the end, actually. The gold ochre went into the powder mix.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's the yellow.
It was the yellow sun.
Yes.
Or sun yellow, I think it's called. Sun yellow. And that's a very intense yellow.
Yeah.
But actually, when you see it in the finished skein, it doesn't look that intense because you put in all those colours beforehand. It really softens it down.
The question you're all asking is, how will it turn out? Well, there's only one way you're going to find out. You're going to have to stay tuned.
Yes.
Because all will be revealed in part 2, coming later on in the show. Because now it's time for us to find out, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
I have 2 pairs of socks.
Woohoo!
So firstly, I have my finished pair of prairie socks. Lovely, aren't they lovely? Listen to me.
Well, no, they are lovely. The
They are
colour
lovely.
is simply gorgeous.
Yeah,
It's
they are
just
lovely.
perfect for the pattern.
Yeah.
And also, they couldn't be more perfect. If we just cast our minds back to the last episode where we were walking through all that culminarian grassland when we were out walking the dales, the colours and also the grasses looked exactly like that.
Yeah, and you saw me dye this colour actually a few episodes back.
Yeah.
It's the wide open prairie.
Yeah.
And I love that it's got that bluish tinge to it. Would Monty Don call it glaucous? I don't know. Would he call it that? I think that means, I want to look that up because he says it often, doesn't he, Monty Don? He says, oh, these leaves are very glaucous. And I think it means they've got like a, maybe I've got that wrong. I think it means they've got like a silvery look to it.
Right.
Which to me hints at blue. I've probably interpreted that completely wrong. But anyway, there's blue in there.
You can see it
Yeah.
in the lighter bits.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Really lovely. So I have done a refresh of this design.
What's been so lovely about that process that you've gone through is how much that you seem to have enjoyed doing it.
I did. I loved doing it. And it was just great to revisit this pattern because it's been 4 years, I think, since I put this
Amazing.
out. And it remains a popular pattern. And that's really what made me want to just go back in there and refresh it. And when I say that, what I did was the actual design itself is the same. It's just the way that it's formatted. I just use a different kind of format now, and I just wanted to bring it in line with my current patterns. So I did that, reknit another sample, put fresh photographs in there, and just tidied up the pattern. You know, there was a couple of bits of grammar in there and typos that I noticed. So that's all been done, and I sent out an update on Ravelry. And I sent out, when you actually do an update on Ravelry, when you replace a PDF, I'll say, on Ravelry, you don't have to send an update to all of the people that have previously bought the pattern. That is an option. I always do that. So I did send the update out to everybody that had purchased this on Ravelry. So that went out. And I also replaced the PDF on Lovecrafts. Now I can't do that updated thing on Lovecrafts. They just don't have the facility to do that. So anybody who purchases it from sort of now onwards will get the refreshed one, but you may well have purchased it previously and that will be the old version, and I can't send out that same update, unfortunately. I'd love to, but Lovecrafts don't have that facility. The only other thing I'll say about the update on Ravelry is that I did actually get a message from someone who said that they didn't use Ravelry any longer, but they were still able to download the new pattern. Now, I don't know how she managed to do that or if that would be the same for everyone. But I've also had messages from people saying, I don't use Ravelry anymore, can you email me the pattern? I just can't do that, unfortunately. I'm really sorry.
The unfortunate thing is if we did it for one of you, we should do it for all of you, because that's the only fair way to do it, and it would literally
it's just not feasible.
take us hours to go through all the people who bought this pattern,
and
identify the ones who don't use Ravelry, extract their email address, and then send the emails.
Yeah,
it would impact all the other things that we do.
People might have changed their email address. It might be different.
Yeah.
It's just not a feasible thing for me to do. So
not when it's a free update.
No, not when it's effectively it's a free update is what I'm sending out. I'm not asking anyone to pay any more for it. I know that lots of people have got the update and because they've sent me little messages, so that's great. So really hope you enjoy the refreshed pattern, and if you've never knit a pair of prairie socks, then it's a great time to try, because what I did as well is just to celebrate the sort of relaunch, if you like, I've marked it as 20% off until the end of August, so there's still a few days to go on that if you want to go ahead and purchase it.
Cool.
Again, that's just on Ravelry though, because I can't do a discount on Lovecrafts. So that's that one. And then, do you want to do yours? Dan Jones?
Yes.
What's off your needles?
Finally. No, it's not finally. Definitely finally for the Cascades. I finished this a little while ago, actually. Yes. And I've sort of been holding it off for a special occasion.
Yes.
And I felt that the start of autumn... Look, I'm really I'm pushing this, aren't I? I'm really hoping that over the course of the next few weeks, I might actually have the opportunity to put this on. Ooh. If we get a few chilly days in September. Oh, yes. Because, finally, he's finished the Ridarri.
Look at that. It looks like that would be in a shop.
That's very kind.
Don't you think? If that was on a shelf in a shop...
You'd buy it.
I would think that's beautiful.
I'd buy it.
I'll buy that for my husband. I think it's absolutely beautiful.
I know it's difficult
Look at
to
the colourwork.
Sort of comprehend, isn't it?
I don't think you could do any better personally, colourwork wise, than that. It's so neat, and the tension is, it's flat. There's no ripples. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's a gorgeous job. Should we hold it up?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Show the whole thing.
Absolutely.
I have given it a block. Oh, I soaked it in the bath. That was the only thing I could think to do.
And this is something actually that I should have been involved with, because I need to learn how to do this. So next time.
Yeah, all I did was, how lovely would it look on me? That's all I'm saying.
Shall I tell you what I think is genius?
Look, it's like I'm wearing it. Does it look like I'm wearing it?
Yes. I'll tell you what I think is genius on the design. Is I think it's so clever that you've got the brown down here, and then the brown comes back in here, and then also it just
top.
It pulls it all together.
Yeah,
there's a reason why a sandwich has bread on the bottom and on the top. Oh yes.
I don't get open sandwiches.
No.
Do you get them?
I don't.
I don't understand an open sandwich.
Neither do I. The topping falls everywhere.
But what's the point of an open sandwich?
I've got no clue. I've got no clue.
It's not actually a sandwich, is it? Because it's just a piece of bread with stuff on the top.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's pointless.
So too. I also don't understand a club sandwich. Because why do you need 3 bits of bread? Isn't a club sandwich like 2 sandwiches stuck together, effectively? Well, so you've got 3 pieces of bread, haven't you?
But it's a treble decker.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, it's called a club, isn't it?
Well, I think, isn't the club element of it the filling?
No, I thought a club sandwich meant you'd got 3 slices of bread.
Okay, well, I totally get... In the days when I could eat a lot of bread...
Then you would like that.
I actually remember the man who taught me about treble-decker sandwiches.
Oh, really?
I even remember where I was.
You sounded a bit like Dorset then. You went, where I was.
I was in Saltburn-by-the-Sea.
Oh, wow.
I was staying over at my mum's best friend, Hazel, and her husband, Bill.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Bill's no longer with us. And Bill, it was late one night. Everyone else had gone to bed, just me and Bill up, and Bill said, I'm going to introduce you to something that's going to change your life. I said, what is it, Bill? He said, come with me. Into the kitchen we went. 3 pieces of bread came out. I'm like, what's going on?
What's going on?
And the genius bit of it was, the middle piece of bread, he buttered it.
On both sides?
On both sides.
Well, you'd have to, wouldn't you?
That's so... I mean, to me, that was so genius.
Yeah, you'd have to. You'd have to butter it for the sandwich below and then butter it on top for the sandwich that's coming above it.
And I know that in that sandwich there was cheese there was ham,
Right.
there was pickle,
Yeah.
and then there was like a layer of like, it was like leaves.
Yeah.
Oh, it was warm leaves.
Warm leaves?
Rocket.
Oh, rocket.
Yes.
You mean, I thought you meant physically warm.
No.
That would be strange.
So there was like a layer of salad in it as well.
Do you sometimes have two different fillings in the layers? Is that...
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it was cheese and ham and pickle,
separate you mean,
and then up the top.
Oh, right,
It's
okay.
It's a totally different thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. They just... And how do you then eat it? Because it's so
Well, what
big.
you do is you cut it in half and put it in your mouth and chew.
But they're so big, aren't they?
No.
Biting it. I don't like...
I'm with you. Those club sandwiches that you buy in restaurants,
They're massive.
which are like huge.
Yeah, they're huge, and they have to put a
They
cocktail
are
stick in them, don't they?
utterly stupid.
So that they
because
stand up
all you
right.
have to do, you either have to deconstruct
Yeah,
it or you have
which-
to push it down.
You might as well
so
have
then you
just
get
had a
covered.
sandwich then.
Yeah, you just get covered in gunge. It's
Yeah.
disgusting. No. This was fine.
Right.
Everything was fine because he perfectly layered it
Right.
so that it wasn't too much.
So it's still
Your mouth could get round it.
Yeah.
And the other trick for me with the club sandwich is don't toast it.
Oh, you do get that a lot.
Do
It
not
is-
toast it.
See, I would never... I don't know, if I'm going to have a toasted sandwich, it would be a proper toasted sandwich
With cheese
made
and
in
beans.
like a toasty maker thing.
Yes, and there's only
like
one
a
filling.
Breville.
Cheese and beans.
Cheese and beans?
Yes.
Aren't they like nuclear explosionally
Cheese
hot?
and beans. Come on.
Cheese and beans does sound nice in a Breville.
It would
I've
change
got to
your
say.
life.
I normally
Sadly, the
just have
days
cheese
of
and
us
ham.
eating those are
I know,
gone.
I can't eat any of this. I don't know why I'm talking about it, because I can eat none of it.
Look, we've digressed
Anyway,
enough.
back-
The Ridarri is finished.
Look at it.
It's
look at it.
marvellous.
Look.
And look out for it on upcoming
Oh, it's
episodes.
beautiful. And Dan has put it on, try it on. It's beautiful.
Yes.
It fits fantastic.
And you will see it on
It'd be like a
in
little
upcoming shows.
dress on me, look.
Yes. What else is off your needles? Because I want my socks.
I'll need to fold that
That's
nicely
fine.
again, like it's in a shop.
Yeah.
So
That's just kidding.
I have no words. I can't even look at you.
That's just
That
kidding.
you just did that. You're not having these now. I've just made them.
Show me the socks.
So the second thing I've finished is a pair of socks for Dan. I've finished his Star Warsy socks. So these are, don't they always look ridiculous? I say this every time, but Dan's socks always look so ridiculously, stupidly long,
Perfect colours.
but they fit.
Looks great. The perfect
So
socks.
these are knit using moustache yarn in the Rebel colourway, which is Han Solo. And it's this gorgeous stripe. And I used a Cascade Heritage for the heel in burnished gold. I've done the lengthened heel flap that I spoke about there.
Were you going
so
to
I
say
do-
lengthened Lille flap?
Oh, it's trouble saying that. Lengthened. It's a longer heel flap.
Yes, there you go.
So there's more stitches to pick up. I did, instead of 36 rows, I did 40 rows. So you get it longer there.
Giving me
And
more space on the instep.
Yeah, more space, and I've done a square heel turn. And a 3x1
Perfecto.
broken rib.
Perfecto.
And these, you get this in it's like a set, it's 250 grams, perfectly matched. And actually mine didn't quite perfectly match. Can you see there, look?
Oh no.
I've got a touch of blue, that really bugged me. There's nothing I could do about it. Can you see, look? There's a blue, I was about a row out. Well, I don't know how it happened
No,
because...
I mean, it really doesn't matter, is what I'm
Well,
trying to say.
no, it doesn't matter, but it matters.
Look at the stripe, it's like his trousers.
Yeah, I know, it is like his trousers.
It's
But
marvellous.
I honestly cast on at exactly the same point
No
in
one
the yarn.
minds.
And people are going to say to me, well, it's your gauge. I cannot believe I'm a row different in just that little bit of sock in my gauge. I know myself as a knitter and I don't normally vary that much.
Honestly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know, I'll stop talking about
Yes.
it.
Thank you for the socks. I can't wait to wear them.
So they're done. You can. All right, I'll let you have those
Thank
now, and I'm going to give those prairie socks to Bryony.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Kay has already begun a journey into autumn with the gorgeous, my favourite colourways. Autumn Walk. Oh yes, I can't wait.
Can't wait.
So let's get back and see if it's going to turn out great or if it's going to turn out awful.
Welcome back, everyone to part 2 of my favourite colourways, where we are dyeing up the beautiful autumn walk. So our yarn has been outside cooling for, I don't know, an hour maybe. It doesn't have to be completely cold, just room temperature is absolutely fine. So we're going to go outside now and bring it in, and it's time to give it a rinse and have a look at what it looks like once we get it out of the dyeing pots. Okay, so our yarn has now cooled down and we're ready to give it a rinse. So in my bowl I've just got some nice warm water with a little bit of gentle wool wash, and I'm going to give it a rinse. And I'll just squidge it out. There's just the merest hint of yellow. I mean, it's barely there in the pot, so I mean, it's great. We've absorbed all of that dye that we put in, and I absolutely love the way it looks. One of these skeins has just got a bit tangled up. Can you see here? So I'm just going to sort that out. It's that strand there. There you go. It dropped off. It had just got wrapped around the tie. So just give it a nice little wish around, just to get rid of any residual dye particles that might, just be lying on the surface of the yarn, and to get rid of the citric acid, more importantly. The water looks nice and clear, so that's good. And you can leave it just sort of hang out for a bit if you want, but I find that a good sort of 5 minutes of just gentle swishing is enough to rinse out all of that acid and any excess bits of dye. And I do find that the bubbles do disperse. I think it must be the acid that causes them to disperse quickly, but that's fine. That looks good. I'm happy with that. So I can now squidge this out and then get it on the line. Okay, so our lovely skeins are dry and they're looking very autumnal, I'm pleased to say. I wasn't quite sure, I fully really couldn't remember how this looked. I did look at the picture, the photo that I took of it, but it must be years ago that I last dyed it. And I think it does look a little bit different, but actually I really love it. I think it's just a lovely variegated autumnal colour. So we're ready to skein up. I'll just choose one. We'll take off our little tie, and then let's just have a little look at what we've got. So how many ties have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. So you need to find the one that is holding the skein together, and it'll be the one that has 4 ends on it. So it's not that one, it's not that one, it's not that one, so it must be the last one, you would think. So it's got to be this one here. It's tucked inside, yes. So there's the tie that's holding the skein together, so we need to keep that one, and then I'm going to keep this one at the bottom and I'm going to snip the other 2 ties. I just don't find it needs all of those ties when all it's going to be doing is sat in the skein. So they're very useful obviously for when you're dyeing, but I don't find you need all of them when you're skeining it up. So that's 1 and 2. Make sure you don't snip your yarn. I've done that before. And now we just need to skein it up. So before I do that, what I do is I make sure that as much as I can I've got 1 tie up here and 1 tie down there, and then you avoid having the ties sort of through the middle portion of your skein, and it just looks prettier. There's no other reason for that than it just looks prettier, I find that way. So just make sure it's all nice and straight. You sometimes get like a little loose strand like that, it's fine, it just happens. So now I just need to skein it up. So let's see how many twists. 1, 2, 5, 6. I'm going with 7 because that's nice and tight but not overly tight. And then tuck the ends, tuck one end inside the other. Lovely, looks really pretty. And if you want to, you can just sort of tidy it up by tucking any loose strands that you see, just tuck them inside the skein. Well, actually it's pretty good. So I just need now to do the other one. So there we go. Isn't it beautiful? I really love it. And it's amazing actually, because can you remember we put all that pink into the initial blend? And I don't think you would know, you know, if you asked anyone what colours were in it, I doubt very much that they would say pink. But what I think that pink does is it sort of softens, because sometimes an orange can be quite in your face, and I think the pink makes it slightly more subdued and maybe a little bit warmer. I'm not quite sure. It definitely does something. It enhances it quite a lot. I'm really pleased. I think it's a gorgeous, variegated, lovely colourway. And so there we go. That's the beautiful autumn walk. So there we go, all done and dusted, our beautiful autumn walk. I'm really pleased with it. I hope you like it. It's a lovely variegated. I don't know, I have done variegateds before, but we've never quite done it this way, I don't think, before. Especially blending our own colour, which it's great fun doing that, and I've done it lots of times, and sometimes it's worked, you know, more often than not it has worked, sometimes it hasn't worked, and you just end up with a muddy colour, because sometimes if you add too many colours you will just ultimately get sort of brown, but this one really worked, and you know, it gave us this, what it gave us is this sort of bright orangey, peachy sort of shade, which actually now, I mean, it does still look orangey, but it's definitely been affected by those other colours that we put on top. And I think it's just a lovely, lovely autumn variegated yarn, perfect for socks. I really want to make some socks with it, so maybe I'll cast those on, we'll see. So there we go. Get into your dye, your little dye, I was going to say dye pots, but you might not have a lot of pots. Get into your dye supplies and just rustle up the colours that you need to make that. And I can't wait to see all your variations on the lovely autumn walk. So there we go. I will see you again next time for who knows what. It'll be something exciting, but more of my favourite colourways.
Now I really am excited for autumn. And I can't wait to see, actually, what you knit up with this. Are you going to do some crumpled socks, do you think?
Yes, I think so.
I think that'd be perfect.
I think they'd be lovely. Yeah, so here's the yarn.
I mean, look at it.
Okay, look at that. Can you see, look at the sparkles. I think they're showing up really well.
Yes, that's called filming in 4K.
Ooh,
yes.
Sparkly. So this is the colour that we made in our little cauldron.
Cauldron?
Cauldron.
No, I like cauldron. You sound like you're East End of London. Cauldron.
Cauldron,
Stick it
Dan.
in a cauldron.
I don't think they talk like that in the East End. Isn't
sound
that
like
more
Pat
like
Butcher.
Mary Poppins or something? Isn't that a bit Dick Van Dyke-y?
Yeah, well, he was trying to sound like a Londoner
I know
too.
he was, but it wasn't like a Londoner at all, was it?
But it was the best Londoner ever.
It's fabulous.
Yes.
If you
Look,
want cheering up, go and watch Mary Poppins.
It's gorgeous.
The original one,
Yes.
not the new one.
Let's
that
not go
they've
down
just
that
done.
hole. This is gorgeous.
Don't go there.
You've done a wonderful job.
Yes. Beautiful. So, and I've posted a picture of these on Instagram and everybody went nuts.
Wow.
Loved it.
Oh, that's good.
So I was really pleased.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm going to...
It's because it's nice.
I don't know whether it's going to be liked or not. I don't know. Okay.
There's everything about that. There's nothing about that people wouldn't like, is there?
It is lovely, isn't it?
Gorgeous.
So I'm going to choose one of these and I'll make some socks with it.
Wonderful.
The other one will go into my little stash of prizes.
Wow.
Yes.
So maybe you, at some point in the future, might win it.
You might get that skein right there.
My favourite colourways will be back, not next episode, but the episode after. Because next time, we're returning to the moors for another walk. And this is a really special one. It's one that I've been saving up and I cannot wait to take you. Because we're going to be going to a town that I love. We're also going to be walking down a hillside towards another destination, which is just it's gorgeous. So don't miss that. That's coming next time. But right now, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Jelly roll, Cal.
Jelly roll Cal is
Hours to go.
Yes, almost finished.
About 72 hours maybe.
No idea what the date is today, but it's almost finished. It finishes at the end of August, so I will close that thread on maybe about the 2nd of September. I'd just like to make sure that I've covered all of the time zones. I don't want to cut somebody off when they're just about to post. I'll probably close it on the 2nd of September, then I know I've covered all bases.
Yeah.
So I will pull for prizes for that on the next episode. So you've still got time, if you're watching this before the end of September, you've still got time to go and post a picture in the thread on Ravelry if you want a chance of winning a prize. You don't have to finish the blanket. Whatever stage you're at, just go and pop a picture in there and you will be eligible.
You're going to flash us some of your wares?
I will quickly flash you the prizes for that, Cal. I've got 8 prizes, so this is brilliant. I've got a beautiful bag from Emma at Eldenwood Crafts.
Looking lovely.
Very kindly donated.
And these, of course, will be drawn next time.
Next time. I've got a sock tube from Ducky Darlings, which was donated as well. Beautiful.
And if you're looking at these and thinking this is lovely, why don't you go and cast on a jelly roll, stick some pictures in the thread before the end of the month?
Yes.
And even you could be winning.
If you've not cast one on,
just go do it.
Cast one on, just even knit a little bit.
And you're in.
Pop it in the thread.
Because this is just the tip of the iceberg, because take a look at this.
Then I've got some yarn dyed by me, and it's all of the colours that I've been dyeing over the last sort of few months. So there's 3 here.
Fairy Garden, Easter Sprinkles.
And also 1971. And then we've got these 3, so there's 6 altogether.
Water Sprite, Dearest Loveliest Elizabeth, and Time Turner.
There we go.
Wow, that's a series in your hands.
I know, isn't it? So 6 skeins from me, 2 other prizes, 8 prizes altogether. I'll be drawing those next episode.
The latest issue of Knitability is out now.
Yes.
Oh yes, it's our back to school special. There's an interview with Mina Phillip and also Bente from the amazing Arctic Crafts, isn't it? Yes. Gorgeous, just gorgeous yarn. Oh my goodness. And also some of the pictures that she sent us of her taking a walk around where she lives.
I know.
If you want to talk about a Viking heaven, that most certainly is it.
Fantastic.
So our latest issue of Knitability is out now. And speaking of magazines...
Yes. Back in December of last year, I was contacted by Nora Gorn from Vogue Knitting magazine asking if I was available to design a sock pattern for the fall 2021 edition of Vogue Knitting. I absolutely did that, and the magazine has just come out. It came out last week. So I've actually received a copy. This came yesterday. Amazing. The timing of that is brilliant. So they kindly sent me a complimentary copy. So it's in this edition.
We should also say thank you to Gail as well, who is sending you one from Canada.
Gail's going to send me a copy. I have actually ordered some copies from a UK online magazine sort of company.
So you've got some coming.
I have got some more coming, but they just haven't got their supply yet. So I will get a few of these because I want to send them to my mum and Dan's mum and stuff. But luckily I got this one yesterday. So I am... Look, there's a picture of me. I'll just hold this up. You have to spot me. Can you spot me? I'm on there. And
It's
then,
like a CIA watch list.
And then the design has been called Obata. They renamed it, which, you know, I gave it a working title and Vogue renamed it to sort of fit in with all the other designs in that section. It's under the American landscapes is the theme. And these are my socks. It's a textured sock, looking very cool on that lady.
Yes.
So those are my socks, and I haven't got the socks, obviously. I knit that actual pair. That's the most amazing thing for me. Those socks on that woman's feet, I knit. So, you know, that blows me away, really. The whole thing blows me away. But anyway, I've got the little sample, the swatch that I knit, you know, before I started the socks. So that's my little swatch. I kept it so that I could show you. I've actually done a design diary.
Yes.
On these socks, and I did it back in February.
Did it in the thick of it, didn't you?
Yeah, before I sent the socks off to America, I actually did a design diary.
And that's coming out next month.
Yeah, all of our patrons, you will see the actual socks.
And hear the whole story.
Hear the whole story. I'll tell you all about it. But yeah, Vogue Knitting Magazine is out now. If you're looking for my instructions at the end, because they come at the end, mine is number 15, and it's Obata.
Cool. Every month we publish an exclusive show just for Bakery Bed patrons. It's called our Pop Live show, and the next one is coming on Sunday the 29th of August. If you can watch live to that silver, gold and platinum patrons, the show will be live from 2 p.m. British Summer Time, and the recording is available to all our Bakery Bed patrons from 3:10.
Yeah.
Did you hear our last radio show? We were talking all about the things we miss from the 1980s. And speaking of things we miss from the 1980s, I bought a packet of Yorkshire mixtures.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like going in a time machine. They have not changed even slightly.
Yeah, and you got them from an actual proper sweet shop,
It is the best sweet shop in the world anywhere. It's called the Candy Bank, and it's in Saltburn by the Sea.
Yeah.
The place where I learnt how to make triple-decker sandwiches.
Yeah, it's up in the town, so you can either go by the funicular railway, or you can walk up, or you can drive up.
Yeah. It honestly is. It's like a proper sweet shop that you know anyone our age used to go into when they were young. Sweets in paper bags, in jars, and just great.
Yeah. I think that's everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been marvellous to see you.
We're done.
And we will return in 2 weeks with another video show featuring a brand new walk.
A lovely walk.
Oh yes. So thanks so much for watching.
Thanks everybody.
And we'll see you then.
Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
Enthusiasm's not quitting for Bentley the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery